This question of why don't exceptions disprove the rule is one that came to my mind while I was imagining a hypothetical argument. I was thinking, okay, if I present a rule and somebody says they give me an exception and then I tell them exceptions don't disprove the rule and then they say why, I wouldn't have any answer. So I was thinking about this deeply. So I wanted to actually share what reasons came to my mind on why exceptions don't actually disprove the rule. And this is going to be tending more towards general rules rather than any specific discipline rules. It's just rules in general when it comes to different phenomena. So the first reason that actually came to my mind was that, and I'll start with an example rather than starting with the idea itself. So let's say I have a general rule that says if you're close to a lion will bite you. Somebody might come along with an exception and say, okay, I've been around the lion and the lion didn't eat me. That's the exception. So why don't this exception disprove the rule? The reason why is because there are a lot of conditions that require to be present in order for the rule to manifest itself. So the lion they must have a certain level of energy, they must have a certain level of hydration, all these things. So you have all these different conditions that require the lion to actually bite you. But the exception might have one of those conditions absent. So maybe the lion has been injected with some chemical that actually reduces their energy. So one of the conditions was not present in the exception, but that condition being absent does not disprove the rule, as we said. So the general rule is that those conditions will be there and the lion will actually bite. But if one of those conditions is not present in the exception, for example, as we said, if the lion was injected with some chemical, then that exception would not disprove the rule. There's just one condition that's not there that made the exception manifest itself, if that makes sense. And most of the times the conditions would be there, but sometimes in the exceptions, the conditions might not be there, and that's why the exception cannot disprove the rule. So this brings us to the second reason on why exceptions don't disprove the rule. Sometimes the exception might be actually manifesting the rule we're talking about, but just in a different way. So an example of this is if I present a general rule that says religious people or people who believe in God are much more resilient against adversity, for example. So this is the rule. If somebody comes along and says, okay, so I have an exception. I know 2 atheist friends, for example, who don't believe in God or any higher power, who are really mentally resilient. So that's an exception to our first rule. Now, the reason why this exception doesn't disprove the rule is the rule might actually be manifesting itself in the exception in a hidden way. So the atheist friend, without us knowing, might actually be believing in a higher power that they don't know about. They might be believing in things like duty to their last names, for example, which actually translates to a higher power, which translates to our rule in some indirect way to a degree. So disproving the rule because of that exception would be hasty because, as we said, the rule might actually be somewhere hidden in that exception. So this is the second reason why exceptions don't disprove the rule. Now, the reason why I think talking about this is important, and it might not have a lot of practical implementations towards it because we know that exceptions don't disprove the rule point blank. But when we think about the why question, I think it makes us understand the dynamics much more, which by extension improves our analysis towards the world and critical thinking to a degree. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video beneficial, and please subscribe and like if you find this video beneficial, and see you next time.